truth, but imagined to soothe.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music. Today, guys, we are going to review the new album by an artist named McCombs, entitled Wit's End. This won the popular vote in our VIMTV Vote for the album you want us to review. This is the winner. So I want you guys to know that we definitely value all of your opinions, which is why we have a voting section. Now, McCombs' Wit's End. This album is extremely, it's a lot of classical instrumentation and composition by an artist who is a composer to the truest and most pure extent. And McCombs, I forget what album number this is for him.
5.
Yeah, something like that. And he had a really big album come out called Catacombs in 2008 or 9. And he's pretty much lived a nomadic life since he started writing music, which was right after the 9/11 attacks. And so this album was recorded in different people's living rooms, essentially, and it has that sort of lonely feel to it. And I got to tell you, my first experience with this album is I didn't like it at all. I mean, I just felt like one of the first things I noticed is that there's just this general lack of hooks or choruses, which for me, those of you who have watched VIMTV enough and know Jake Jackson enough to understand that I absolutely hate that verse-chorus, Bieber-chorus song structure because of these guys right here who have defined it for 40, 50 years now. It's something that, I despise in music, but at the same time, I do feel that hooks and choruses and climaxes and dynamics are very important, and that's something that's kind of devoid on Wit's End. There's really not a lot of that there, and so I did not get into this at all. I was planning on giving this in the mid to low 60s, but then something happened, and this album clicked with me last night. And I was sitting by myself, and I want to tell you a quick story. I was just sitting by myself. My wife was at work. I was in the dark. I had just woken up from a nap because I haven't been getting much sleep lately, and I was listening to this album, and I was like, and all of a sudden, and it was mid-album, I just had this realization that this album is all about how you have to emotionally attach to this album and feel it before you can actually think about what he's doing, especially if you're not a trained musician, because he's definitely trained. He knows he's a great composer. He writes very, very intricate and pretty and aesthetic instrumental parts. I know that's something Tom picked up on, because Tom is much more a musician than I am. But yeah, he self-described this album as going deeper into the catacombs, a world of darkness and total feeling. That phrase, total feeling, is exactly how I would describe this album. This album is all about total feeling. And to me, when I'm listening to these tracks, if you can actually get to a point and open up your heart, and I use the phrase, open up the doors to your heart, and actually totally feel this music, it makes so much more sense because the lyrics play an important role, the vocal delivery, the intensity, the minute intensity of each instrument he plays. As he's playing this guitar or playing the piano, each note is soaked in emotion, and as each time he pushes it, it releases it and just washes over you. It has an amazing effect. And to be honest with you, I had to keep listening to this over and over again before I got it, and I kind of have it programmed in my head. It kind of reminds me of the kind of cathartic point you went through when you listened to Yonzi's Go.
Yeah.
When we reviewed that. And you just had this epiphany that this album's just deep and genius, and I was sitting there going, man, I wish I had that. But that's kind of what I went through last night, and I felt like, that it was just such an incredible thing, and I actually came to terms with the fact that I love very little choruses on this. I think there's only like 1 or 2 songs that have an actual chorus. Otherwise, there's lots of really slow, dark, brooding waltzes in 3 that just convey, and it just goes on and on and on, and the change in the dynamics is all in the lyrics and in the emotional changes in the instruments, which I think are very well organized and composed and put together. Tom, what were your thoughts?
I definitely did like it. As you pointed out, I really did attach to the musicianship on here. Now, I'm glad that you went first because my points about this really relate back to what you said about the style,
right,
and looking at it more as like almost classical composition, because at first what I was thinking is this is 8 tracks. The songs are pretty long, probably average 5 or 6 minutes at least, and I feel like they don't really go a lot of different places for being as long as they are. And in that way, it is kind of more like classical movements.
Absolutely.
And so what I was thinking is, I'm thinking, well, I like the ideas, but he just kind of draws them out instead of going different places with them, or just having more tracks and they're shorter, which would be kind of standard. And so that still bothers me a little bit, but I can understand where you're coming from, because if you're able to have that emotional connection, then it's better for it to just be drawn out and have more of that.
Because then it has more of a dynamic impact on you.
Because it gives you time to let it soak into you. Whereas if it was that standard, 3 or 4 minutes and 12 or 13 tracks, you wouldn't have time for any one track to really get you like that.
Absolutely.
And so for that reason, I'm glad that you had the experience you did. Now, I wasn't able to attach to it as well as you did.
One of the criticisms I have, Tom, is that this is relatively inaccessible music. I mean, it takes a lot of focus and detail, attention to get. It's not something that I think that a lot of people who are really into like the indie pop scene are just going to be able to latch on to if you've never been predisposed to this music before.
It's very slow moving.
Yeah.
It's very slow moving. It takes a lot of patience.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying is that he was really shooting for the moon, which I appreciate and respect the hell out of, because it was basically like he was saying, this is pretty much only for the people like you, Jake, who are able to have the patience and to let this affect them the way that it can.
I agree completely.
Whereas otherwise, if you're looking for something with just like the more pop structured 3 to 4 minute tracks, then you're going to be disappointed. And it's like he realized that, didn't care, and went for what he wanted to do, and pulled it off. And I really liked that about it.
Absolutely.
So for me, a guy who is on the other side of it that I was just talking about, where I do enjoy the music, but I don't attach to it emotionally as much, but I'm still able to appreciate just the good songwriting that's on here, because it's one of those things where 8 tracks, if there were, even just a few weak ones, it would be a huge hit against the album. But there aren't. All these songs are good. And while, I'm probably done with them maybe a minute and a half before they actually finish, I still enjoy them. So that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, one of the things I just wanted to touch up on really quick is the amount of contrast he is able to include, especially on 2 specific tracks, especially track 6, Hermit's Cave, which starts off almost more optimistic, but then slowly, like really just changes sides. It's like it's like a Jedi, Anakin is just switching from the light side of the Force to the dark side of the Force within a 10-minute span of a movie. I hate you, George Lucas. But then he adds this, so it goes dark, and then there's just all of a sudden you just hear this clapping, and there's this smacking. It sounds like somebody took like this little table we have in front of us. It's like I took a 2x4 and went pop, and it just adds this huge contrast that before I was feeling this thing, I thought was really annoying, but then like once I'm like into it and like loving this, and then I'm just like, oh my god, that is the fact that raises my anxiety and like makes me shake a little bit is the coolest thing I've almost ever heard, and I absolutely adore that. Something like that again, a knock at the door, the closer, you hear a knock, and it's kind of cool, and it adds that contrast. It adds a poignant, static moment that just hits you, and that's exactly what I want to see. And I just think it's cool when a classical composer like this can do that, because I almost don't even look at it as songwriting. These are movements, and that's a great call. So I'm really glad. I love your feedback there. So I'm feeling like this is one of the stronger albums I've heard in 2011. I'm going to be coming back to this all the time, and it's something that I really enjoy. I'm giving this a 93.
I'm going 77.
And I feel like that shows the range of people that are going to listen to this, because I think that even people who prefer headier music are still going to like this a lot. It just won't be quite as extreme as the experience that I have. But if you did have an extreme experience and really got into this album, I'd love to talk to you about it at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and check out Ian's Tumblr blog at vimtv.tumblr.com. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV. You are VIMTV too, actually. We are moving music critique forward.
Wasted.